For a second consecutive season, the Florida Gators are an improbable SEC Eastern Division champion. Credit Jim McElwain for patchworking another team in Gainesville and getting past Georgia and most notably Tennessee, despite the loss head-to-head to the Vols, and pulling off the upset as a 14.5-point underdog in Baton Rouge. So we credit the Gators for a number of reasons. No Luke Del Rio. They had to go with Austin Appleby at quarterback the last few weeks, and despite the 7 of 17 performance, Appleby gets the win, and the Gators move on with a backup quarterback. Also, consider the home field disadvantage in this situation. The Gators had the game October 8th scheduled in Gainesville. They had to turn around and play in one of the toughest venues in college football in Death Valley, and Florida wins the game, falling behind 7-0. They come back and win it 16-10. They also, in the process, defeat one of college football's most talented teams. Not necessarily one of its best teams this season, but if you just look at recruiting rankings and what's going to go to the NFL, certainly the LSU Tigers, one of the most talented teams in all of college football. Okay, sometimes you win games, sometimes games are handed to you, and in many respects, LSU handed this game to the Florida Gators. Leonard Fournette was not supposed to play. There was a scuffle before the game. It kind of inspired Fournette to discount the injured left ankle, hobble onto the field, get 12 carries for 40 yards, but he was clearly not the back that ripped up Ole Miss for 284 yards and the rest of the SEC minus Alabama. Of course, Leonard Fournette, 12 carries for 40 yards. The last carry that he had was late in the third quarter as LSU tried to score, and he was stopped inside the 5-yard line. And then the LSU Tigers botched the snap for the field goal. Florida had nothing to do with that. So what I mean here is giving away a game versus winning a game and taking a game from the opponent. So a team can fumble without the opponent causing the fumble, or a great defensive end can make a tremendous play coming off the edge and force a strip sack fumble. Those are two different plays, the same result though. And I'm just pointing out a number of ways in which LSU botched this game and Florida was handed this game. Darius Geis had a nice game in replacing Leonard Fournette, but he's nothing close to Fournette at this point in his career. 83 yards rushing, 29 receiving. He fumbled inside the 10-yard line. He was also stopped inside the 1-yard line. If you saw the game-deciding play as LSU was trying to punch it in from inside the 5-yard line, they were down to the 1-yard line with seconds left to play, and Geis ran the wrong way. He was expecting a pitch. It was supposed to be a pitch. It was handed off, and there was confusion, and the Florida defense, having one of the best fronts in college football, penetrated and threw him down on the game's final play. I mentioned Austin Appleby, 7 of 17. He had the big 98-yard touchdown play to Tyree Cleveland. Other than that, he did little. He had 46 yards passing. The defense was exceptional. Caleb Brantley with 3 tackles for loss, so that's what Florida's got going this year. Jordan Scarlett, they're finally getting him the football above the other backs, 22 carries for 108 yards. So what Florida's got going for it this season versus the dismal performance they put up against Alabama in the SEC championship game last year is, number one, that they've got at least a quarterback who can threaten the defense throwing the ball. Austin Appleby is not one of the game's better quarterbacks, but he's at least a precision passer to an extent in the pocket, unlike Treon Harris last year. And Eddie Pinheiro, 3 for 3, 16 for 20 on the season, is at least a capable field goal kicker, and the Gators were a disaster trying to hit from 3 last year. At least if they move the ball into field goal range against Alabama, and I'm not discounting the Florida State game, but I'm looking at the SEC championship game against the Crimson Tide, at least Florida can convert field goals. They've got the capable throwing quarterback. First, they have to meet Florida State, a team that dismantled them 30-2 in Gainesville last year. Gator fans, I'm talking to you. What does the SEC Eastern Division Championship mean to you? You've won it 2 consecutive years with an undermanned team. You've pulled off the upset against Tennessee, I mean in the division race, but you're most likely going to get throttled in the SEC Championship game. Last year, the Gators actually were in the game within a score throughout the second half and lost by 2 scores at 29-15. So not exactly just blown out, but not competitive with Bama. And it appears as though this game in Atlanta will be much of the same. So Florida Gator fans, are you thrilled, satisfied? Where do you stand with the Eastern Division Championship, pretty much knowing you're not going to win the whole thing in the SEC and move on to the college football playoff? That would be a monumental task, and certainly is taking on Florida State and Bama. But if the Gators can pull off a miracle, they will go to the college football playoff. Let's talk about Florida's situation upcoming against the Seminoles and facing Bama in the SEC championship game right here on Mark Rogers TV.